back, and thank you for listening to the Adam Messer Show today. I'm your host, Adam Messer, and I'm here today with my special guest, Dr. Julie Olsen.
Hello.
Hello.
We're back.
We're back. And this is the second hour. And you know what? Talking about learning. And this is one of the things I love. We were talking, I was talking to Julie during the break about, I'm not trying to be negative. I'm just using the term negative and not trying to focus on it. And I love the way that you reframed it. And I was trying to say that I am talking about like difficult situations or difficult, choices and things like that, and dealing with difficult people. And I love the way that you said that using the word difficult would be a lot better than using the word negative. That's just to reframe it. I think it was a great way to do that. So we're going to be using difficult
or challenging.
Challenging, yeah.
Yes,
that's good. But that's one of the things that I think is important, because if you can deal with those difficult situations or difficult people or difficult challenges in a professional manner. Like last hour we were talking about how, when you were a young CEO or not CEO, but young director,
right.
And you had an interaction with a person that they tried to overstep your authority.
Right.
And you had to bring that back around, and you had to, you owned up to, I probably would have done this differently.
Right.
And that's a difficult challenge. I had a manager, like I've been working full time since 1992. I was 16, and I had little part-time jobs before that. As a kid, we all, cut grass and all that kind of stuff. I used to wash trash cans out and all that. But I had a full-time job at 16, and my first management job, I was 18 years old. And I worked at I'm not going to name names again because I don't want to get sued. But I worked at a large grocer, and I worked for a manager that said, never apologize. Never apologize.
Wow.
And they were serious. That was the old school way that they managed, by fear, just by ruling by control and that kind of thing. And I always thought that was wrong. And one of the things that I try to do as an adult learner was to apply that. And like Harry Potter, they have the Defense Against the Dark Arts. Have you ever seen the Harry Potter series?
Actually, I'm probably the only person on the face of the earth who has.
I feel like learning about how to navigate difficult situations of people and things like that. I feel like that's how you can defend against that kind of stuff, because you don't want a culture. One of the things that you brought up while we were talking was there was a person that client that you're working with, that they have a person that's always focused on the negative stuff, and it makes it even worse because they don't ever focus on the positive.
Right.
So that was not what I was trying to do. I was just trying to talk about and tackle some of these
difficult situations. But, giving recognition is difficult. It's more difficult than you think, because you've got people, there's several different personalities. And one thing we talk about, I've worked with companies looking at different personality styles.
Yeah.
And there's some.
Well, like you were talking about IT.
Yeah.
You have people that are, they're really good at, technical process.
Analytical,
yeah, but they don't have people skills. And I'm not just saying IT. I'm just saying in some people are more process oriented.
Yeah. If somebody's very process oriented, though, and you go to recognize them, you need to be very specific in your recognition. I'm a very, I am a very outgoing, very gregarious, very just generous. I'm very driven. I approach challenges head on. It's like, so if you said, "Hey, Julie, you did a great job," I'm like, "Thanks, Adam. I know." Whereas somebody,
I don't think you would say it like that.
No, I wouldn't. But I would have said, "Thanks, Adam," and I would have felt like you were very sincere.
Right.
Now, you say that to somebody who's a behind the scenes, a little slower paced, a little quieter, behind the scenes,
suspicious.
A little more, and they're like, "He really didn't appreciate what I did. He doesn't even know what I did because he didn't say anything specific." And so actually recognition is a little bit more challenging than most people think about. In one company, we came up with a recognition form where people would fill out, what do you like? How do you like to be recognized? What's your favorite, candy? Things like that, so that you knew how to address someone. Well, and here's the irony of it. I helped come up with the form, get it all out. Guess who was the last person to present it? Because I was out attaching the challenges as opposed to thinking about how you're going to recognize me, right? So people approach it very, very differently, and it can be challenging.
I think you're dead on the money on that, because like we were talking about memes earlier.
Oh, right.
And there's a meme that is going around, and it laughs about recognition. Like, oh, the company gave us a pizza party instead of compensating us.
Right.
Right. They're like, great job for boosting our sales by 50% last quarter, but you're not getting commission, which actually happened to a friend of mine recently. And so when false praise comes around, talking about another difficult situation, the system that you're talking about seems like it's very genuine and authentic. But there are people out there who will use that system as well and not compensate their employees. So that culture, again, it's kind of like, it's like, well, is this person being sincere, and are they being authentic, or is it just a, kind of lip service and, whatever? Like you're saying, that one person's going to be like, well, they don't know what I do. And that's, that is a challenge, because some people, like when you have sales and you have service, sales folks, a lot of times they love that, hey, you're doing a great job. And that, gets them motivated, where you have service people that are like, I don't want to hear that I'm doing a great job. I want to know how I'm doing a great job.
I want somebody that I've served. Show me the letter from someone I served. And it also varies with for-profit and nonprofit sometimes.
Yeah.
What is the driving factor for that person? And if you can get to the heart of that and customize that recognition, that person who wants that sincere recognition, you give it to them in the right way, they are going to give you so much more. I
think it's because you invest the time in actually getting to know that person.
Right.
Versus trying to do a cookie cutter solution for everybody.
Right.
That it's not going to work. I mean, like, good job is not going to work for everybody.
Right.
Right. I like that you would take the time to get to know people. And, like you said, the last hour, they were asking, well, how did you do this? How did you get these people to do this? And you're like, it wasn't me.
It wasn't. It was, helping them understand the overall mission and how they can contribute at a better level, because it was at a nonprofit and people join nonprofits to help others. So tapping into that from, not in a bad way, but helping them feel more valued by showing them their value that they bring.
I do a lot of volunteering, and I raise funds for the Ronald McDonald Charities of the Coastal Empire. I've been doing events and raising funds, and that is something I feel like is so true when you're doing a fundraiser or a nonprofit type thing. You get people there that you get folks that they, like, one of our donors does not want any kind of public recognition. They just do it because they want to to do it.
Right.
You have some people that they do, and everything's appreciated, but they do, like, a minimum, but then they want a lot of recognition.
Right.
And I'm like,
It's about,
so it is.
What's the motivator? I will tell you, I learned very early on, and most people probably do not remember Yancey Watkins, but he was the CEO of the YMCA when I started. And I was 20 years old, running the day camp, driving a school bus, a standard shift school bus.
There you go.
Yes, all 5 foot tall of me. And even got pulled over one time by the police because he was like, what kid had this bus?
They thought you were joyriding? Wow.
Yeah, because it was empty at the time. And he was like, he pulled me over. I said, no, really, I can drive the bus. And but one day I came in, I'd been out all day with the kids. I'm sweating. It's hot. And Yancey's in his suit. The board members are all in a room. They're about to start the meeting. And he puts his arm around me, his, real clean suit.
And you're sweaty.
And I'm sweaty and hot. And he says, come with me. And he takes me in the room. And he said, before we start this meeting, I want to I want to introduce you to Julie. And he said, when we're in here talking about the business side of the organization, Julie is out there with 150 children today,
Mm-hmm.
raising and adding value and helping them to learn values
Mm-hmm.
that are going to make them productive citizens
Yeah.
for us in the future. They are our future. She is building our future. I'm standing there dripping wet from sweat in shorts,
Yeah.
going, is that what I was doing today? But it was a gift he had that when I walked out of there, I had a whole new perspective. I'm not just going
You
to
were
pull all
valued,
these
yeah.
I was valued,
Yeah.
and more importantly, I was adding value to these children.
Yeah. You had a
And-
greater purpose.
And helping people understand
It wasn't
that
just
greater
driving that bus.
and it wasn't just leading a day camp. It
Yeah.
wasn't just babysitting children.
Right.
It was developing our future. That was huge
Yeah.
and different the way he reframed it for me.
And I bet that helped you to really appreciate where you were at in your life.
It did, and it helped me as I was hiring later on, as I became a director and was hiring people to help them understand what was important. And I really learned a lot from him about framing it in a way that helps people understand the time they're giving is adding value. And you can do that nonprofit and for-profit.
Well,
Yeah.
you're talking about last hour. You're talking about like 26% of issues boil down to accountability.
Right.
And talking about reframing things, it's not a blame game. It's, hey, how can we resolve the situation?
Right.
How can we resolve it so that the next time whoever caused the situation doesn't cause it again? It's a learning experience or whatever, right? I feel like that's really important as well too, because you do have different ways of leading. There are people that they want to lead by example. There are people that want to lead by, like, hey, I'm going to talk the talk, but you're going to do the work, Julie.
Right.
You're going to drive the bus. I'm not getting out there with them, and I think that you said his name was Yancey.
Right.
I think the way that Yancey made that visual presentation saying, hey, y'all, when we're in here talking about what's going on out in the field, this is Julie, and Julie is doing what, we're helping these children. This is everything. Like when I worked at the school, everything was to help students.
Right.
Everything I did was, focus on helping students. And so, I think sometimes that disconnect there with folks is they're like, okay, well, we're going to work and we're going to talk about this, this phone today, but we don't understand why.
Right.
We just think we're going to make up different processes and stuff like that. And then it comes down to the person, out there trying to sell it or make it or whatever. They're like, well, how am I supposed to do this? And they don't
Right.
understand, like, well, Julie, they don't need air conditioning on that bus. They're only driving on the bus for like 15 or 20 minutes. Like, you ever been in Georgia heat on a huge metal bus? Have you ever ridden on a bus in the middle of August, sir?
Right.
But then they can visualize it. It gives, I think, the connection there, and being able to say, hey, this guy Yancey's like, and I don't know Yancey.
Yeah.
Never heard of
He
him.
passed several years ago.
Yeah, it sounds like, he had a progressive thinking of like, hey, let's remember this is about the kids going to the schools here, and this is about the people that are working here trying to better their
We're
lives.
investing in
or whatever.
them. We're
Right.
investing in them. And I'll tell you, another person that most people would know is Mr. Demery. Bobby Demery Sr. was on our board, and I remember him telling me one time, he said, I wasn't having a good day and I wasn't feeling good about what I was doing. And he asked me.
You weren't?
I wasn't.
Oh,
I wasn't feeling good
you.
about it. I personally
okay.
wasn't.
Okay.
And he looked at me and he said, well, what'd you learn from it? And something had happened where it messed with trust. And I said, I learned I'm too trusting and I need to be careful. And he looked at me and he said, absolutely not. It's that gift you have of believing in people that makes a difference and makes people want to be better.
Mm-hmm.
And he reframed it for me again.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay. But right now, it has created an issue.
I don't feel so good about it right this second, but
But it was really about not losing whatever that little genius zone you have, that part that makes you special and unique.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever that is, don't lose it because something happened that, maybe broke your trust or did something. figure out how to stay true to yourself and maybe learn from that situation.
I love that, because I actually talking about the other day we were talking about Marianne, and I was talking to Marianne, and there's a story about and sorry, I've got to do the station ID. You're listening to the Adam Messer Show here on WRU LP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Science Community Radio with Global Soul. And when you are a good person and you inherently try to see the good in other people, and that's why we're talking about the difficult situations and difficult people, because that is difficult when you're in a situation where you are exposed to prolonged duress, stressful situations, stressful people, things aren't going your way,
right.
But you have an end goal, or maybe you don't. Maybe you're just like, I just got to get through today. I just got to get through the next 10 minutes or whatever. I've always tried to work on not letting other people change who I am.
Right.
And not let them affect me. And this story, I love this story. I don't know where it came from, but there's a guy, and he's out camping, and he's with a friend, and there's a snake, and the snake keeps going into the campfire. And this guy keeps getting a stick, and he pulls the snake out of the campfire. And the other guy's like, leave that snake alone, let it burn and whatever. And the guy's like, no. So the snake keeps going into the campfire or whatever. And like second or third time, the snake finally, gets away, and the snake bites the man that saved him from the fire. And the other guy says, "See, I told you. Why didn't you leave the snake alone or whatever? You knew the snake was going to bite you." And the guy's like, "Oh yeah, that's in his nature." Well, why did you help him? Because that's in my nature. And I love that, because no matter what other people are doing, you have control over your emotions, and you have control over your actions, and that those kind of situations that you can be in a negative situation, and you're like, I don't feel so good about this right now.
Right.
Thank you for your feedback or whatever, and I appreciate it, but I don't feel so good about it.
But I will tell you, this is almost 30 years ago, and I remember those kind words.
Right.
And it's really about understanding, and there's special gifts he had. And those kind words at that moment were one for me.
Yeah.
And you don't know how you're going to impact people.
Right.
And how long it's going to stay with them.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, it's be true to yourself and be good to others.
Yeah.
And by doing that, down the road, there's going to be benefits. Even if the other person never recognizes it, there's going to be benefits. I actually let somebody go one time. I had to fire them from the YMCA. I ran into them, and it was almost 10 years later. And when I did, it was one of those situations where I said, I have to do this because here were the clear expectations.
Right.
You knew them up in front. I gave you every opportunity to be successful.
Your hands are tied pretty much.
You'd made the decision
Right.
knowing the consequences. I have to let you go, right? And it was a very young man. And later, it was almost 10 years later, I ran into him, and he wanted me to know that he was now a physician. And I'm sitting there going, oh no, oh no. And he said, the fact that you were very clear with your expectations and the consequences, and I was young and didn't believe you, you woke me up. And I realized that I had not been, basically, he was saying he hadn't been true to himself.
Right.
That he knew he should not have done that, but he did it anyway to see if he could get away with it.
Yeah.
And he didn't get away with it. And it was a learning for him that 10 years later, when I saw him and he's walking towards me and I want to duck somewhere.
Oh, no. You're like, oh no.
Oh no. He's the one that said, thank you, because it made me really grasp what I was doing, where it was going, and where I wanted to be, and the behaviors I was doing that were counterproductive.
I can't tell you how many times somebody has treated me poorly and then come back later on and apologized.
Right.
Because I treated them with courtesy and respect.
Right.
I didn't let them step on me. I'm not trying to say I let them I wasn't a doormat or anything like that. I kept my boundaries, but I treated them with respect and courtesy even when they were not. And I think that that's one of the things, testimony to what you're talking about, because you said, hey, I have to let you go, but you treated the person with respect,
Right.
and dignity.
Well, and I think it comes to one, a real buzzword right now is emotional intelligence. But really, the first part of that is understanding yourself
Mm-hmm.
and then how you're perceived by others and being able to control those emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start getting frustrated and angry and showing that, which it's hard not to for some of us that are real
Yeah.
expressive.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, it's hard not to. But when you do that, you're giving up your control
Yeah. Right.
to the other person. And
Yeah.
it's tough. So really understanding more about what are your own personal hot buttons, so that especially
I've been
if you're-
dealing with that a lot lately. I have.
come
yeah.
on.
Oh, seriously, I have. And that's one of the things. And I know this sounds really crazy. I've said this a couple times, but that's one of the reasons why I want to talk about difficult situations,
Yeah.
because it's easy to be on your A game when everything's like going great.
Right.
When you're firing on all 6 cylinders and everything's going great, that's real easy to soar on the high tops of the mountain. But when it's pouring down rain and it's thundering and it's lightning and you can't see 5 feet in front of your face, that's when your true character shows, because you're like, well, how do I let this person go without treating them poorly? Well, I told you shouldn't do that. Blah blah blah. You could have been real nasty about it, but
Right.
you weren't. You chose to be professional. But there are a lot of folks that like talking about EQ or whatever, emotional intelligence or whatever, that they don't understand how to regulate those emotions,
Right.
and they don't understand how to, and I mean, buzzwords. I don't like talking corporatese. I hate that,
Right.
Corporate buzzword and all the other stuff. But when it comes down to treating a person with dignity and respect and common courtesy, I think it's almost not a lost art, but it's a dying art when it comes to treating people with courtesy and respect on every level. Here's this guy that 10 years later, he's trying to, come to you and say, hey, and you're trying to, you're like, you don't know what's going to happen. You're thinking maybe there's going to be something negative. You're trying to, and the guy wants to tell you thank you because you helped me understand that I need to be responsible, personal accountability or whatever.
Right.
And from an interaction where the person wasn't, they did something they shouldn't have done.
Well, and I think on the other side of it is sometimes we beat ourselves up more than we should. And we focus on beating ourselves up instead of learning from it and getting
Right.
better.
Right.
And I think it takes practice to be able to maintain your
Yeah.
emotions often. And sometimes people are made up differently. And there's some people that they are very expressive. And it's hard to turn that off. It's great when it's positive, but it's really hard to turn it off.
Yeah.
And so learning how to do that, but also it's more than just sitting in a class or reading a book or listening to a podcast. It's really about practicing
Yeah,
it and
yeah.
understanding what are those triggers that are going to, and then what do you do with when that trigger? I'm going to see Adam. I know it's going to be explosive. And so how am I going to
No, it's
prepare
not
myself?
explosive.
I mean, and that's
Yeah.
not the case. That's not the case, Adam.
I know, I'm just saying. It's funny though.
But it's really about identifying when those things are going to happen and what are your alternatives
Yeah.
and choosing wisely.
Yeah. I love that too, because that's thinking instead of reacting.
Right.
That's like strategizing, what you're going to do versus just letting things happen, and I mean, there are going to be situations that happen where you have to react,
Right.
but it's how do you, with the training, how do you, process that? How do you deal with something that you don't know?
Right.
You have to ask those questions and you don't know which questions to ask all the time.
Right.
So you have to, keep working at it.
And it
That's
is
one of the
tough.
reasons I think, well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I think it is tough. And again, your personality style. Some people have a tendency to get upset and they withdraw.
Mm-hmm.
Others explode.
Mm-hmm.
Others kind of look at you and analyze it. And so it's really different strategies for everybody.
Mm-hmm. That's circling back around to your book. That's one of the things I like about the idea of your book being like, I wish I had known that. Yeah, that
Right.
situation where you had to let the guy go. That's a great example of I wish I had known that for him.
Yeah. Well,
and
and
he
it-
learned something from it.
And in the book, it's like that would have been nice to know is really focused on what they learned when they went into their new role. So I had One of the chapters is military to civilian world. I've got chapters, multiple industries within your industry, nonprofit, for-profit, nonprofit, government mix. I mean, all of these different transitions. But in particular, one of the people I interviewed, out of 28 I interviewed, one of them was a commander for a special operations unit. And he was very bright, very smart, and led a command, right? Very bright guy. He transitioned to the banking world, and he said, Julie, when you go to a meeting and there's that inner circle. I said, yes. And he says, well, I used to lead that inner circle. And then I go to the bank, there's the inner circle. There's the chairs behind the inner circle. And then there's the back of the wall next to the exit sign. He goes, that's where I ended up. And it wasn't that I wasn't smart, I wasn't bright, I was in a new situation. And my previous role got me the job, but that wasn't what was going to keep me in that role.
Yeah.
So it's really these transitions. I learned so much from the people. I learned more from them, I think, than through writing my own book. I learned so much.
I think that's a great. I'm really looking forward to reading the book. But I think when you were talking the other day, Ed, I was like, oh wow, this is because I've known you for a long time. But other than us chit chatting at the front desk and stuff like that, I mean, we've never really had a prolonged conversation. You know what I mean, or any kind of discussion like that. And I haven't seen you in a long time, and I thought it was really cool when you were talking about this book because it's a culmination of your leadership experience, development experience, and then listening and hearing what other people had to say. And you focus on career changing,
right?
And I feel like it's not just for career changing.
It's change.
It's change.
It's change.
Right. And that you can apply that to any part of your life.
Right.
And I think that's one of the really cool things, like learning that way. And that's one of the things I thought was so cool about it. I was like, this is something that can help people, and I'm sure with the guy, the special forces person, being a duck out of water, he had to learn how to re-navigate into a new world, and it got him the job, like you said.
Right.
But he had to learn how to be successful in this new place.
And now he's a global managing director. And we were talking just recently, and he said, I see now the other side. I said, exactly. Now that I understand what the new employees were challenged with, as an organization, you can now start looking at, are there ways I can help? Proactively help people transition, because in the fall they say with the pandemic coming, slowing down, there's going to be a tsunami turnover tsunami is the term that's kind of going around.
You're talking about for this fall?
This fall, that a lot of people are going to say, okay, they're staying in their role because of the pandemic and they wanted a job, but now it's opening up and a lot of people are going to be shifting and changing. How are you going to make those changes successful from an individual perspective, but how can the organization also make those changes successful?
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting the way that things turn out. So, all right, we're going to do the station break, and we'll be back in a few minutes, y'all. All right, and we are back, everybody. Thank you for tuning in today. You're listening to WRUULP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul. This is the Adam Messer Show, and I'm your host, Adam Messer, here today with my special guest, Dr. Julie Olsen. And you have just been sharing a wealth of knowledge today.
Yeah, I've been having fun. We've just been talking.
Oh, yeah, yeah. But I love it because that I feel like that is a trait of a person who is confident and secure in themselves. When they're willing to share with other people, I feel the same way. You know, when you can share with other people, and it's just to do it, just to benefit them, to help them. You know, I learn more when I'm trying to help other people than I do when I'm just trying to help myself.
Right.
So
you never know what you're going to learn when you're talking with people.
Right.
And even when I teach, sessions, webinars, whenever I'm facilitating retreats, I learn a lot. I learn about myself, but I also learn about different industries. I learn about different challenges. I learn about unique ways to address them.
Yeah.
So it's rewarding.
Yeah. And I love the fact that, talking about that reward, that when you were talking about nonprofits earlier, that's one of the things that I enjoy, because when you do something for somebody else and there's no expectation of something in return, or there's no expectation of, you getting an attaboy or, anything like that, even the kudos or whatever. For me, that's a personal reward, because I feel like I did something to help impact somebody else, to help them. So that's a reward, one of those intrinsic rewards for me by being able to help somebody else.
And there are for-profits that also have that same kind of rewarding culture. I mean, think about it. Okay, I'm a consultant. I own my own business, right?
Right.
I do it to help other people. There are other organizations, even some large ones, that are out there that are for-profit in their structure, but that basically means they're either privately owned or they're where the profits go to. But that doesn't mean they're not really driven to help people.
Oh, yeah.
And that's where I think sometimes my dissertation was on for-profit, nonprofit leadership in healthcare.
Oh, very cool.
And I really looked at some of the drivers are very similar. It's the business makeup is different, and that sometimes drives the behaviors in the organization. But just because you're a for-profit doesn't mean you want to help people. And just because you're a nonprofit you do want to give back to the community. Some do it more effectively than others.
Yeah, I agree with you. I know a guy that he does a lot of charitable stuff.
Right.
And instead of setting up a nonprofit, he just does it with his company. But the stuff that he does is like charitable stuff.
Then there's one of the people in my book has a very successful organization, but created a foundation to be able to give back.
Yeah. That's one of the reasons why I love the Ronald McDonald charities of the Coastal Empire, and in general the Ronald McDonald charities, because they help families who they're going through a difficult situation where their children are either critically injured or ill. Right. And it helps them provide a home away from home. Right. And when at a time where they're like, they're not able to work, they're some of them, they're out of pocket by, not being in their hometown. Right. They have to come, to the area or whatever and, work on it, making sure that they can do whatever they can do for their children. Right. And with the Ronald McDonald House, what they do is they provide amenities. I mean, it's not a hotel; it's a house. Right. But they provide. They're great. Yeah, and they provide. They provide those amenities for those folks. And they're a nonprofit.
But they're associated with a for-profit.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And the Ronald McDonald House was started as a way, for like a big company to be able to, have a mission and help families. Right. And I think that was one of the, that's one of the things I love is that, you see, you don't just see it, but you can feel it, when there's that genuine association with trying to help other people. You can feel it. You don't have to, because a lot of people talk it. A lot of people talk about it, or whatever. And this is like, we were saying earlier, like there's some nonprofits that they're there to make profit. I think it's interesting when you have folks like that, because I've seen it. I've seen it on both sides. You have some folks that you can't give away the farm.
Right.
You can't, you have to make, money, and the business is there to make profit.
To make money. And sometimes, people think, well, they're making money. That's what a business is about.
Yeah, it's set up to make profit.
You can't really do much if even nonprofits have to make money.
Right.
And I think that's a misnomer when people say, well, nonprofits don't make any money. Mm-hmm. That's not necessarily true. Mm-hmm. Some nonprofits make money, but they just invest it back in services. And so it's really about whether it's nonprofit or for-profit, it's going to drive your culture because the accountability measures look a little different. A for-profit might have to report to shareholders, where a nonprofit has to report to the community, perhaps.
And the board. Yeah.
And so there are different motivators in what they track, perhaps, and metrics. But that doesn't mean one is any better than the other. Each organization is going to have their own mission.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I mean, I've known people that they'll make personal donations, and they don't necessarily have like a for-profit or a nonprofit business,
right?
But they might volunteer their time. They might volunteer, their money, their treasure or whatever. They might volunteer their skills. Like you're a consultant, you might volunteer your skill sets to help, a nonprofit.
I'll be doing a session for United Way executive soon, but it's one of those things too that how can you give back?
Right.
And you may give back in different ways. It's understanding what you want to give as well, and how you want to make a difference. And I challenge people to think about, what legacy do you want to leave?
Yeah.
What's the legacy you want to leave?
Right.
And you can leave a legacy leading a for-profit. I mean, a CEO told me one time, my mission is to help build leaders,
right,
so that people are successful and can give back.
I mean, I look at that exactly what you're saying. When I worked at the school, it was a for-profit school. I helped thousands of students graduate.
Become gainfully employed and change the lives of their families.
Exactly. I mean, like that permeated, you were a teacher there.
Right.
That permeated throughout the community. And that was a for-profit school.
Right. And now I also worked at a government school. I mean, I worked at Georgia Southern when it was Armstrong here, and I taught, but I still was investing. Yeah. It goes back to my passion is investing in people, developing people. I was investing in people. I wasn't working for a for-profit, a nonprofit, a government entity. I was using my passion.
Oh yeah, I think that's one of the things that you have to. People always talk about, well, what's my purpose in life? And I can't tell them. I can't tell you what your purpose is. I don't know. I mean, I have to reevaluate that myself.
And it could change.
It does. It does change, right?
It changes over time sometimes. And for me, the consistent thing is I started working at the YMCA when I was 16. Mm-hmm. I did that. I've done almost every role I've had has involved developing people in some way. Mm-hmm. When I was running a large organization, a part of a large organization, that was developing the people in that part of the organization to be successful for continuity for business purposes. Mm-hmm. When I was working at with teaching courses, I'm developing talent for the future. That's been the common theme, but it took me a while to figure that out, that seems to be where I gravitate and what I enjoy doing and where I get the best, where I feel I can add the most value, which then makes me feel good about myself. And that's what people need to figure out is, what is that? I know somebody who's very good with numbers. Mm-hmm. And when I need something, guess what? They are my go-to person. Right. But they're adding value, and they're helping me be successful by their analytical skills.
I think that's great, too, because if you can, if you could figure out, like, okay, we're a good match.
Right.
I mean, because there are a lot of people that are good with numbers, but that doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to be a good match with them, or vice versa.
Right.
When you can help them and they can help you, and it's mutually beneficial.
Right.
I think that's a great relationship. There's relationships where you don't have to have any kind of transaction at all. I mean, like you and I aren't having a transaction.
Right.
We're just talking.
Right.
You know, I mean, there is no transaction here. You know, but I feel like there can be good relationships where it is just transactional. You know, where you have good customer service. You know, you have a customer that might come in, they want to see you just because you're, you know, and when I say customer service, I mean, like, for example, when the CEO is like asking you, well, how do you do it, Julie? How did you get these people? You know, you're providing that service. You're helping those folks. You're providing them with something that they need. You're helping the people on the front end and the back end.
You know, when you used to teach what we call the TOPS model, and it's really when you can look at your talents, what are you talented at doing? You can look at your passions, and you can match that with what an organization needs done, then you're going to be at your career best.
Yeah. Yeah.
The organization's going to benefit,
true.
and you're going to benefit,
That's
and
so
you're
true.
going to feel good about your contributions, and so is the organization.
That is so true.
You know, when you try to do your talents and passions and nobody wants to pay for it, you know, you kind of are unemployed, right?
Right. Right.
But realistically, in every job, you're talented, the organization needs it. You're not necessarily passionate about it, but you have to move into good soldier mode. I mean, I own my own company and I love it, but I have to get into good soldier mode at times. Yeah. And so it's really about how can you look for a role or have that mindset that I am using my talents and my passions to help an organization succeed. And when you can do that, you just feel good about what you're doing.
Yeah, yeah. We're on that quarter hour mark. I can't believe it already. It's been almost 2 hours. It's so crazy. Everybody, you listen to WRU LP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul. And my special guest today is Dr. Julie Olsen. We've been talking a lot about, we talked about your book. We've talked about like navigating difficult challenges and
Congratulations.
situations. Yeah. Reframing, you know, that thinking into, you know, I don't want to say positive because like talking about buzzwords again, I don't like all that. No. But reframing it into something that I think is workable. Right. You know, it's something like you were talking about. How can you marry your talents and your skills with the organization? I love how you said that, you know, that good soldier mode, because sometimes you just have to, you know, knuckle down and just do the work.
Right.
You know, well, I think 90% of the time you should knuckle down and just do the work and not, you know, worry so much about, you know, you want to do a good job, you know, but you don't have to worry about like the other outside factors, or, you know, you might have had a bad experience over the weekend. And here you are going into Monday, you know, are you going to let that carry over, or are you going to, you know, just say, hey, that's whatever, you know, and go into that? Or you might be dealing with a difficult situation at work. You know, how are you going to be able to be a good soldier, like you said? How do you move forward?
In the book, you know, that would be nice to know. One of the things that the transitions that one of the consistent trends was you have to deliver. And even when you first started.
Wait, hold on one second. When you say you have to deliver.
Results.
Yes. You have to get the job done.
You have to get the job done. And in your first few weeks and months on the job, it's even more important because you don't have that strong reputation.
And you want to show them that they made the right decision.
That's exactly your point in the first 6 months, is to keep validating to your employer that they made a great decision in hiring you. And as part of that, I remember a long time ago, Tom Peters wrote a book, and in it he talked about two things. One, if you're not moving forward, you're not staying up. You're losing ground. But the other thing he talked about was there's a lot of value in taking on those little jobs that nobody else wants to do because it doesn't take much to be the winner. It's like
there are people out there making fortunes by doing work that other people don't want to do.
Yeah. And so when you start a new role and there's some maybe low-level task that nobody wants to do, and you go, you know what, I can do that. And if you exceed expectations with that, which is easier because the expectations are typically low, right? We just want it done. If you exceed, people remember that.
Yeah, if you have a great attitude and you do the job and you get it done, I think people do remember it. if you just do an average job, they're not going to remember you. If you do a poor job, they'll remember.
They'll remember you for the wrong reason.
Why did you do that? But I think it's so interesting. When you can, like you said, be a good soldier. That just kind of go through that process.
But then over deliver at times, and that's when you're really going to stand out. And like I said, in the beginning of any new job, your job is to confirm the decision they made to hire you, to give you that chance, confirm it.
I think too, finding ways to renew and learn and grow as you go. For example, like just talking about this radio show, for example, I've been doing this radio show for 3 years now. So I try to look at ways that I can improve the show for the people that are listening, and my guests, I always try to look at a way, because one of the things that common issue that I deal with, not a problem, but, just something I encounter. People are not really sure what the show is going to be like. They're not really sure how it's going to go and that kind of thing. And it happens a lot because I have folks that, I've interviewed people from, well, not all over the world, but I've interviewed people from like different places or whatever.
Right.
And they're used to like question and answer, just like that, kind of thing. And they're used to like sound bites. And I try to explain to them, hey, no, I like to do a casual conversation style or whatever. And I'm always trying to look at ways that I can improve the show. I'm always looking for ways that how I can, deliver that for the people that are listening.
Right.
And so, and my show's not, super, what do I say? It's not really well known. I don't have like, millions of people listening, like some of these bigger podcasts and stuff like that.
Right.
But I feel like when I have someone on the show, for example, like you were saying earlier, you're having a lot of fun. That's what I want. I want you to leave feeling like $1 million. I want you to leave here having, I had a lot of fun with that. You know what I mean? I don't want you to have a bad experience. I want you to have a good experience. I want you to be able to take it away and say, hey, you add value, I added value. We had a good time. You know what I mean?
Well, and I will tell you, I was one of those that was thinking, okay, so as you know, you got a text today. What are we talking about, Adam?
I wasn't even talking about you. That happens all the time.
No, but Adam was like, don't worry about it. We're just going to talk. And there was a little bit of angst.
I can understand that.
But you are so good. And one of your genius zone is making people feel comfortable and confident and just talking. And that's something you're really good at. So it's really nice to see you in this environment, being successful in this studio and having fun. But it's your passion and you're talented at it. And obviously,
I like to
needed.
talk.
Well, and you figured out a way to make that helpful for others, which is great.
Yeah, I think that that's a big theme that we've been talking about. And just having that process, I hate to say that, but having that process of, where you have, you go into a new job and you're trying to do the best that you can, and your book is talking about career changes. You don't know what you don't know. Right. And when you go into a new job, sometimes all of that experience and the knowledge that you have, it's going to help you, but that might necessarily, teach you how to do the job that you have to do. You have to learn that job too, or you have to learn, that's level of skills with that position or whatever. But you can marry those two. You can bridge them. You could take your skills and say, hey, I know how to do this one thing over here. I wonder if it would apply to what I'm doing now. Right. I think that's really interesting with the book that you've been working on these interviews. And it's not just you talking about it. It's you said like you had 28 different people that you interviewed. So you have a wide range of people who are coming from different backgrounds, going into different industries. Like you said, all over the world. You have all these folks from everywhere. And I think that's really cool. It comes right down, it comes down to the humanity of we all have to deal with change. Right. And I love that idea of you doing that, and then you're working on, getting the book published and all that stuff. So,
well, and it's really comes down to learning, and I have, as you know, I've been a student of learning my whole life, and
Me too. Lifelong learner.
lifelong
Here.
learner.
Love
And
it.
I went when I started my doctorate. Okay, I'll tell you a quick story. I called the university, and I would get this woman on the phone that sounded like, your really encouraging grandmother, right? I mean, she just was always very positive. Well, they told me I had to take the GRE, and the closer I got to the date of taking it, the more nervous I got, even though I was studying and practicing. I had been out of school a little while. So I called because I needed to talk to my encouraging grandmother, right? And a male voice picked up the phone, young male voice. And I said, where's my encouraging grandmother? And he said, she's off today, but I'd love to help you. And I'm thinking, don't think you're going to know how to do this. So I said, well, he said, what's your question? And I said, well, how important is the GRE to the entrance process? And he starts explaining to me that you have to be able to read highly technical, understand, transfer information, all this. So, yeah, it's pretty important, and we have a pretty high grade that you have to
Expectation
make.
for it, yeah.
And I said, oh. And he said, but don't worry, I'm sure you're going to do fine. I just took it last summer, and I did great. I said, let me ask you something. When did you graduate? Did you
Right.
graduate in the spring and then
Right.
do this in the summer? And he says, yes, I did.
Yeah.
And I did great. You're going to be fine. And I said, let me put it in perspective for you. I'm guessing if you just graduated in the spring, that you weren't born the last time I took statistics.
Yeah.
He laughed, and then he went, wait a minute, what do I say now? You know?
man.
And he said,
That's so
I'm sure
funny.
you're going to do fine.
Yeah.
So
Dr. Julie. how are you?
anyway, I'm
Hey.
good.
This is Bill Cooper. He's
Hey.
he's
We
one of
can
my
let him
good
know.
friends, and he comes in next. So,
Good
Right
to
now, I'm trust
and speaking of that, yeah,
All
we're gonna
right,
wrap the
thank
show
you.
up. And so, thanks a lot, Julie, for being here today. I really appreciate it. And you are working on your book. Do you have an idea when you want to publish it?
Hopefully in September. Hopefully it'll come out September, early October. Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
that
And it'll
sounds
be,
really good.
that would have been nice to know. If you're, if somebody's interested and they
Mm-hmm.
want to know, I will be sending out information off my website so they
Okay.
can join my
What is the
newsletter.
website?
It's www.workplaceadvancement.com.
Okay, I'll put a link to it in the podcast as well.
Okay. And that way, if somebody's interested and they want to read it, they can, they'll get information from there
Awesome.
in the future.
Well, thank you so much for being here today, Julie.
Thank
This is
you, Adam.
wonderful.
I've had a great time. It's
Thank
been
you.
fun.
Awesome. And